printing press was introduced, it changed the state of things throughout the world. Johannes Gutenberg invented the printing press in 1440, which allowed a way for knowledge to be mass-produced for the first time. During the first century of the printing press, it was used to print pamphlets, almanacs, newsletters, Bibles, and related materials. In 1662, periodicals for amusement were being published. The name of the bulletin was Le Mercure de Galant, written by French writer and playwright Jean Danu Devise. It contained news, songs, short verses, and gossip. It was frowned upon by other writers for being amusing rather than intellectual. It became very popular in France. By the 1700s, literacy began to increase, and so did intellectual prowess. Society's desire for knowledge prompted magazines as a popular cultural staple. These periodicals were being produced by English printers. According to magazines.com, the review was published from 1704 to 1713 by Daniel Defoe. In 1709 to 1711, a periodical was published called The Tatler by Sir Richard Steele. These publications were printed a few times a week and resembled modern newspapers, and their content was more similar to that of modern magazines. In 1731, an Englishman named Edward Cave published periodicals called The Gentleman's Magazine. He invented the word magazine from the Arabic word makhazin, which means storehouse. His publication was geared toward the general public and achieved two major accomplishments. One, he created the term magazine, and the other was being the first publisher to successfully create a wide-ranging publication.
The first American magazines were published in 1741. Philadelphia printers Andrew Bradford and Benjamin Franklin owned rivaling newspapers. Neither magazine was successful. Bradford ran for 3 months, and Franklin's lasted for only 6 months. According to Britannica, most periodicals were designed for wealthy people who could afford them, and were appropriately called quality magazines. In the 1830s, less expensive magazines promoted improvement, enlightenment, and family entertainment. In 1832 to 1846, a new style of magazine was being published in Britain. Charles Knight published the Society for the Diffusion of Useful Knowledge with his Penny magazine and Penny Cyclopedia. The Chamber brothers, William and Robert, with Chamber's Journal, reached a circulation of 90,000 in 1845. According to Britannica, national magazines were not published in the United States until the 1850s. Two of its best-known periodicals were the Saturday Evening Post and Youth Companion. These publications were primarily intended to warn against the ways of transgression and to encourage virtue and pity. According to Library Brown, by the end of the 19th century, advances in the printing trade allowed magazines to be published with mass production methods. The slow flatbed press began to give way to the faster rotary press. Magazines no longer had to depend for their artwork on reproductions of sketches. In 1822, S.S. Mercure became the first editor of The Wheelman, a Boston publication by Colonial Albert A. Pope, a manufacturer that held patients on the bicycle. He left to become a proofreader at D.E. Vine Press, a printing house in New York. He later joined Century Company. Mercure had the idea for a newspaper while working there. In 1882, with $7,500, he began to plan a 15-cent monthly for readers who could not afford to spend 25 cents or 35 cents for a magazine. The first issue of Mercure's magazine was released when the financial panic of 1893.
According to magazinedesigning.com, New York in the 50s was the hub of the modern magazines. Manhattan was the birthplace of a new generation of designers and art directors who have established design and magazine advertising as we know it today. Several buildings in Manhattan housed revolutionary greats in the magazine industry. Alexei Brodovich of Harper's Bazaar, Leo Leone of Fortune, Steve Frankfurt of Young and Rubicam, Herb Lubalin of Hennessy, Henry Wolfe of Esquire, Art Paul of Playboy, Alexander Lieberman of Condé Nast. Also according to magazinedesigning.com, at this time period, making magazines was very difficult and time-consuming. There were no computers, so everything was done manually. The main tools were pencils, erasers, rulers, and tape. It took around 4 months to produce one single issue. According to ThoughtCo.com, in December 1953, 27-year-old Hugh Hefner published Playboy magazine. The first edition was 44 pages long and had no date on its cover because Hugh Hefner wasn't even sure there would be a second edition. In the first run, Playboy sold 54,175 copies at 50 cents each. Marilyn Monroe was the sweetheart of the month. According to Wikipedia, in the 70s, a new kind of magazine emerged, Celebrity Magazine. The first issue of People was published in 1974. Since, this has been the most popular kind of magazine. People aim to keep the magazine people-based and not issue-based. These years also continued to bring about a boom of women's magazines, such as Cosmopolitan and Vogue. According to brainpickings.org, with the rise of technology, magazines began releasing digital archives in one form or another. In 2008, Life magazine partnered with Google to release one of the world's largest and richest photographic archives on the internet. Recently, Popular Science made 137 years of its archives available online, and every issue of Spin magazine is available on Google Books.